In the last few years, the main reason sites are losing rankings is ironically because they're doing too much SEO. You have to do a lot of really hard work and also wait a lot of time to get back in Google's good graces.
What do you think SEOs are getting wrong about AI search, whether it's overestimating or underestimating its impact?
What a lot of these folks, I think, are getting wrong is losing sight of the bigger picture. Even the people that work at OpenAI and different LLM companies claim that they're not experts, but nobody can actually be an expert in how these things work. AI content is winning. It's working really well. I just don't see that working forever. And I imagine Google is working very, very hard right now to figure out how to demote all of that content. I imagine in 2026, we're going to see a huge crackdown.
Welcome back to the Agency Insider Show. I'm your host, Navneet Kaushal, and today's guest is someone I've wanted on the show for a long time, Lily Ray. Lily is the Senior Director of SEO and Head of Organic Search at MSIF Digital. Lily is one of the most influential voices in SEO, especially around ranking volatility, content authenticity, and of course, the rise of AI-driven search. Lily, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so you've been becoming one of the most trusted voice on EAT and search quality. For people who may not know the backstory, how did your career evolve towards this specialty?
Yeah, so I've been working in the agency world for about 12 or 13 years now. So I've worked on lots of different types of clients and categories of clients. My first experience getting affected by a Google algorithm update in a significant way was the Penguin update, which I think was 2012.
Everyone.
And yeah, it was not fun. But that was basically like the seed was planted at that point for me to kind of understand, like, when you're doing SEO, you have to be really careful because there's this whole other side of SEO, which is Google spam policies, and you can get in really big trouble. So later on in my career, we were working with some companies around 2016, 2017 that were affected in a big way by Google's core update in August of 2018, which the SEO community called the medic update. So a lot of like health websites were impacted then. And I was able to see firsthand what I believed Google was targeting with that core update. And that set me down a rabbit hole of really obsessing over like algorithm updates and quality updates and Google search quality guidelines. And at the time, Google had really started to focus on what they called EAT at that time. So that became kind of my biggest focal point, and that's something that we helped clients with over the last several years.
Okay, so what you went down the rabbit hole, of course. So what drew you to this kind of investigative work? So is it the data and the research? What exactly was that?
Yeah, I mean, I think because we take on these types of projects, because we've kind of made a name for ourselves in focusing on EAT and working with your money, your life websites. So a lot of like health related, insurance, financial, those types of websites, you start to see really similar patterns, especially for companies that have been affected negatively by algorithm updates. I've probably worked on maybe 50 to 100 different sites that have been impacted by algorithm updates or manual actions over the years. And the patterns are very clear, right? When you start to see them at scale. So the first place we look to understand what's happening, I think, is Google search quality guidelines, which is available online. It's a PDF. It's 160 plus pages. Most people don't read it, even though I think it contains a lot of the answers to how Google actually operates. But beyond that, we look at the client's own data. And when we start to see patterns around what type of content is being demoted or what types of websites are being, devalued or demoted or penalized, it gives us a lot of insights about what Google is looking to elevate in the search results and what works and what doesn't work.
So in recent time, out of the analysis you have done, what do you think is the main reason sites are losing rankings?
In the last few years, the main reason sites are losing rankings is ironically because they're doing too much SEO. Yeah, it's kind of it's a
And
new,
too much AI content, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, AI content is one aspect of it, but I would say starting in 2022, Google started to change its ranking systems and its, spam policies and everything and content policies to really focus on what they call human first content, and demoting content that was written for search. So a lot of the tactics that worked 5 or 10 years ago in SEO really, really well are actually the same tactics now that can get sites in a lot of trouble. So I would say the vast majority of what we help companies with when companies have been negatively impacted by algorithm updates or penalties is cleaning up a lot of the SEO work that they did a few years back. So just because something used to work doesn't mean it will always work forever.
So what do you see more issues from when you say overdo an SEO or do too much SEO? Is it more from a content side or more from a backlink side?
It's both. I think a lot of companies that were engaged in really aggressive SEO techniques, let's say between 2018 and 2022, were usually doing a combination of both. They're probably scaling a lot of content. They might be engaged in programmatic SEO content strategies. At the same time, they're probably pretty aggressive with building backlinks, buying backlinks, trying to get backlinks in various places. And all of those are patterns approaches that Google can detect pretty easily algorithmically, especially when certain approaches are popularized, right? If we go to an SEO conference and somebody's sharing the secret weapon that they found, and then tens of thousands of people are going to do the same thing on their sites, or better yet, somebody builds a tool that automates a lot of those same techniques at scale, which is what we saw with the helpful content update. A lot of these companies were using the same ad networks, the same AI content tools. It's very easy for Google to detect those as like a footprint in the search results and to demote all of those sites at the same time.
Right. It's just like in the good old days, if you would have same GAID under the same login, your site will get hit. So now it comes with the same networks.
Yeah,
of course,
they can still do that.
yeah, they'll still do that. And I know because in affiliate world, it was more the helpful content actually killed all of this. And now with this new algorithm updates, it's happening. So when you see, just out of curiosity, I'm sure most of my listeners would be, if site gets hit by AI content because excessive AI content, have you been able to, or have you seen some sites recover back?
Well, recovering is much harder than like not getting hit in the first place, which is why I play such a defensive role in SEO, because I work on so many recoveries and they're so frustrating. They take so much hard work. It's almost like when you've been demoted or penalized by Google, I consider it in many cases being put in jail, right? And then once you're in jail, you have to do a lot of really, really, really hard work and also wait a lot of time to get back in Google's good graces. Like very rarely is Google like, you know what, we forgive you. You're back where you were 6 months ago. It doesn't happen like that. It usually takes, I've seen it take 2 years for some sites that have been doing really hard work, which is why, again, like, I think people get very tired of me like preaching, follow the guidelines, don't break the rules. But I'm just trying to protect companies from getting in that situation in the first place. So with AI content, we're still a little bit too early, I think, to see a lot of recoveries for sites that have really scaled AI content, because it's so new that we're still kind of like, and also like there's not that many examples of companies who have scaled a lot of AI content. They've been demoted or penalized, and then they said, you know what, let's rewrite all of our content with humans. Not a lot of companies choose to take that route because that takes a lot of hard work. So I think, unfortunately, recovery, it just requires so much hard work. Most companies don't have the resources or the patience to put in that necessary work.
Right. Because recently we started doing is when we get a new client, the first thing we do, previously we used to do analysis like backlinks and everything. Now we put more emphasis if the content is AI. And I've come across so many websites using AI, and being our client, they still don't listen. We say this gonna get hit, and at the end of the day, it's the agency's responsibility, or it comes on agency if their site gets hit. Despite telling that it's an AI content, you will get penalized.
Yeah, I think it's a really weird situation right now because, listen, there's a lot of examples of AI content, pure AI content, rehashing somebody else's article with AI on your own site. Like there's many examples of that ranking really well right now. Like I'm not going to deny that. I'm actually surprised by how well that content does rank, given Google's guidelines. I think the problem is it doesn't work forever. So if we've learned anything, and listen, many companies are comfortable with only having a lot of success for a year or 6 months. Maybe that's all they want, right? Maybe they make a lot of money in that window where if they lose everything, they're still happy with the success of their website. So I usually don't speak to those types of companies because I'm working with brands that can't take those types of risks. They're playing the very long game. But I think what we're seeing right now is we're seeing one of those moments where, yes, AI spam, AI content is winning. It's working really well. I just don't see that working forever. And I imagine Google is working very, very hard right now to figure out how to demote all of that content. I imagine in 2026, we're going to see a huge crackdown, much like what we saw with March 2024, the core update, the helpful content update, the penguin update, the panda update. Like there's so many examples to point to that Google just needs a little bit of time to get the algorithm update correct. But I think that's on the horizon.
I think it's the crawl budget thing they are pushing. As they crawl less and less sites, it's the updates. They are putting more of their GPUs or CPUs towards the other part, or the TPUs, which they call, towards the AI updates. I think because that race they just want to be. So I think that's the only thing. But as I always tell my client, you are just one update away from getting killed.
Yeah, 100%. Listen, I agree with you. I think Google's obviously shifted a lot of its internal resources towards AI, which is why I think search quality has declined, in my honest opinion. I think a lot of spam is ranking really well. That doesn't mean they stopped focusing on those things. It probably just means it was maybe deprioritized this year. But even just yesterday, Google had a meetup in Zurich and they confirmed we still care about search quality. We still have algorithm updates that are coming. We're going to have smaller core updates that aren't always publicly announced happening all the time. So like, just because maybe we're in a little bit of a, let's say, like a gold rush with, generative AI and with almost like spamming Google, I just don't see that lasting forever.
Agree. Now let's talk about the building enterprise SEO team. I mean, something you never discussed before publicly. So you led 35 plus professional at MSIP. That's not a small team. Of course, that's actually an operation. Now, walk me through how you have structured that team and what does the organization chart look like and how did you arrive at that structure?
Sure. Yeah, so this is the second agency that I've worked at in my career and the second team that I've helped grow pretty substantially. So in my first agency role, when I joined, we were 3 people. When I left, I think we were about like 9 or 10, 6 years later. And in my current role, it's much bigger growth. So when I joined this team at AMSIP about 8 years ago, we were, I think, 8 people on the SEO team, and now we're about 30 to 35. So, there's all kinds of things that have helped. Number one, I cannot pretend to be the only person overseeing our team. We have, I think, 3 2 directors or like senior directors below me, or like, I wouldn't even consider them below me because in reality, they're doing most of the hard work in terms of like managing the team and the clients and the operations and everything. We have several associate directors below that. And then the way we kind of break it out is below the associate directors, we have SEO strategists who are really tasked with handling like client strategies and execution and running the client calls and everything like that. Below that, we have specialists who maybe have like 2 to 3 years of SEO experience. They're doing a lot of the day-to-day work. And then below that, we have analysts who are relatively new, but they're helping with more basic, SEO tasks and reporting and everything. And then we also have interns as well. So we have several different teams within our SEO team that are responsible for managing a certain portfolio of clients. And each of those teams kind of also specializes in a certain area of SEO. So for example, we actually have a tech SEO team within our SEO team. It's about 6 people. They handle all things tech SEO. They're much, much more knowledgeable about tech SEO compared to the rest of the team. And that's by design, that we basically have them plug into very complex technical projects as needed. We also have a local SEO team within our team. So like an entire group of people that are only focused day in and day out on Google Business Profile and local search, and they plug into things as needed. So like different clients work with different teams, and different teams have different specializations.
Okay. And do you have a backlinks team as well?
Not as much. We all kind of focus on it. But we generally actually partner with digital PR companies to work through backlinks. We don't think it's the best use of our specialists and strategists' time to be doing link building all day when we could work with real professional PR teams. And most of our clients that we work with have their own PR teams. So in many cases, it's just us like kind of partnering with them and providing them with data and insights.
Now, many agency owners listening to this podcast are 5 to 15% stages, trying to figure out when to specialize. At what team size did you find it necessary to create a dedicated specialist, or say a dedicated technical SEO person versus an EAT specialist, or maybe a content strategist? So what broke that forces you to spend?
Yeah, I think the reality is most SEO professionals specialize in one key area, right? Like it's rare to find an SEO specialist who's fantastic at everything SEO related. You usually
Right.
find people that gravitate more towards technical SEO, which we always encourage, right? Because I would say that's more rare to find people that are really interested in tech SEO. But you probably
Right.
find the tech SEO people are maybe less interested in developing an overarching strategy or looking at backlinks or having reporting calls with clients. Like they kind of tend to like to work behind the scenes. So when you kind of start to identify these different characteristics of different people on your team, that's when you can kind of say, okay, we're going to let the tech SEO person really just go the extra mile with understanding tech SEO, going to the tech SEO conferences, having all the right tooling, managing the tech SEO tools, like all of that, and then having them plug into different clients as needed. Because in my experience, it's hard to make somebody who, let's say, is really good at content strategy. For example, we have certain people on our team with a news and journalism background. It's very hard to make those people experts in tech SEO. You just can't
Yes.
be an expert in everything. So I think it really started like the bigger the team got, the more that we realized that we need to kind of these people focus on the area.
Okay. Right. Now, so I mean, most of the time people see that they're a client-facing accounts manager, and they are behind-the-scene execution specialist, and the agencies struggle with this. Either their senior people are buried in client calls and never execute, or they are invisible to client, and the relationship suffers. So, do you have a separate role for a client servicing, as you mentioned, and these people are quite experienced, or how does that go?
I would say that's one of the biggest challenges that we face as an agency. With SEO, as I'm sure you're very aware, it's very hard to find people who can interface really well with clients and
Right.
explain SEO concepts in detail and with great accuracy, because a lot of the times the people that are doing the SEO work, especially more technical SEO work, they speak in ways that clients don't understand, you know?
Geeky
So
language. Right.
yeah, so we have some account managers on our team who are literally just tasked with like managing the account, making sure that the reports are going out on time, making sure that there's an agenda for every call and there's takeaways sent after every call, like literally just managing the team. Some people are
Right.
much better at that. I think the challenge there is finding that balance between the person who's doing the account management and the people who actually have the skills to communicate what's happening. So I think we try to find a balance where the people that are almost like managing the clients and the communications are really tapped into what the team is doing, and then bringing in the team's experience and insights and expertise when they need to answer something. If a client asks about a canonical question, it's not going to be the account manager that has the answer, but they're able to loop in the team and just basically take what the team is saying and relay it back to the client.
Right, right. Because most of the time, the only challenge which even I face in my agency is that the communication, because the SEO is too much talking in their own language, and the client just want to understand in a human language, I would say, and that becomes a challenge. So yes.
Yeah, I remember one of my first, so when I was much younger, I used to, before COVID, we used to have a
Okay.
lot more in-person meetings in New York with our clients. And I remember very vividly one time, I was very young, very new to SEO, and one of my teammates was presenting to one of our clients in person. And this was an older gentleman who really did not understand what we were talking about. He just knew that he needed SEO. And my teammate was using a lot of these like SEO terms, right?
Right.
And he was angry. Like he almost like pounded the desk and he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I need you to explain this to me in ways that I understand. And that was a really big learning experience for me, because so much of SEO is explaining these concepts to people that don't care about the details of what we're doing and they don't have time to learn. So
Right.
that's actually one of the biggest challenges, I would say.
Right. Now let's talk about hiring. So what skill are you actively, or your agency is actively hiring for today that you weren't prioritizing a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I mean, like everybody else right now, I'd say we're very focused on enthusiasm around AI and also like um, not even necessarily just like building, a million different things with AI and automating everything with AI. That stuff is interesting to us, but we want to know that you're doing it in a smart way. We want to know that you're understanding the limitations of AI, how you can integrate AI with other tools like, using MCPs, things like that. All of that is very exciting to us. And I think what's interesting about it is, if you asked me that question 10 years ago, we'd probably say like, we want to know where they went to university. We want to know what they majored in, right? Like none of that
Right.
really matters that much anymore. It's really about, are they testing things? Are they building things? Are they following the latest trends? Are they very passionate about this? Because right now, there's a very big difference between employees who are really excited about this stuff and really want to put these new tools to use, and employees who are maybe like scared or don't love AI. And like, unfortunately, for many people, like this is just the direction that not only we're going as an agency, but our clients really want to see from us as well.
So the most biggest challenge which I face in my agency is the SEO guys who have been working for a long time don't want to change. They are
Yeah.
not very, and I find younger people much more enthusiastic. In fact, I think they get the things much faster these days than the older guys, specifically when it comes to the AI things.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think and I'm guilty of it as well. Like I understand being at a certain point in your career and having a certain skill set where now you have to like revamp your entire skill set and learn all kinds of new tools, and you're like, I'm tired, Like I totally understand it. But I do think, I mean, these tools are so amazing in so many ways, and so many of the processes we used to use for SEO can now be at least enhanced with AI. So even if you want to use a lot of the same tools, and the good news is a lot of these tools are adding on new AI features anyway, you just have to
Right.
keep learning. This is probably one of the years where I've learned the most with the help of AI. So at the very least, you need to show excitement and passion and enthusiasm about continuing to learn.
Right. Because right now I always give my team that I started my career 23 years ago when SEO was infant stage. There was nothing, and it was I get same enthusiasm in me now with the AI, which I had 23 years back. You in 2002, it was a .com buzz. Google was new, and I was every day learning new thing, excited. And I find same excitement in me. I don't know, most of the people, I don't know, don't resonate with it, but I think it's a good time for people to learn and grow, and people just get scared with, or they are using AI just for very very mundane tasks, which I don't at all like. They're asking basic questions with chat GPT, and I say that's not what you should be doing with it. So
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I would say probably like to your point about, or to your question about what are we looking for in people that we're hiring, it's not only excitement about AI, like I mentioned before, it's understanding how these tools work, or at least excitement about learning how they work. I would say the vast majority of how I spent my time learning this year is learning about how LLMs work, because the problem with LLMs is that they just tell you what you want to hear. So if you don't know how to ask the right questions, you might be deceived by the LLM. You might be given information that's not 100% true, or like hallucinated data, or like looking
Right.
at a spreadsheet and then giving you fake information. And then when you say, you didn't even look at my spreadsheet, it goes, oh, I'm sorry, you're right, I didn't actually access the file. Like it's not just pure excitement for AI. It's, I understand the limitations of these tools, so I
Right.
figured out workarounds so I can get the most accurate data as possible. So I think skepticism is really important right now, because as amazing as these tools are, they're not perfect.
Right. Now, so I mean, of course, you grown your team in last 4 years so much. So, what's the biggest mistake you made while scaling that you would warn other agency owners about?
I think not every agency is in this position, but like number one, you know, you have to be selective about which clients you work with and which types of projects you take on, especially now with AI search. Not every company is going to be able to grow and benefit as much as they used to, with SEO and what we call AEO, and that's just a harsh reality. And I think it's better to be honest with clients about that in the beginning.
Okay.
So, sometimes let's say they're a startup and they're selling a product that's never existed before and nobody's searching for it. You know,
Right.
yes, there are things we can do, but we have to be honest about the amount of growth that we can realistically expect to see within a short time frame. So I think sometimes you get clients, and like as an agency, you want to take on lots of clients, right? So like you might take on a client who has unrealistic expectations. You might take on a client who also, like, there's red flags that we look for. Like if a company has worked with 10 agencies in 6 years, it's like, why do you keep changing agencies so often? Maybe that's the sign of client who's not willing to really stick around and play the long game with their partner. So I
Right.
think, yeah, like many agencies, it's just taking on the wrong types of projects that are not a good fit for our team. There's also toxic clients, honestly. Like there's clients that can be really mean, and they really kind of like lower morale on our team.
I'm
That's
sure
not
we all
good.
had those.
Yeah, like if you have teammates literally resign because they don't like working on the clients that they're working on, like that's not fun either. So I think vetting the client is actually really important, even when you're in the growth stage as an agency.
Let's move to our next segment, which is EAT, brand reputation and trust signals. Now, you have said repeatedly that brand is the strongest ranking factor. Now, what does brand authority actually look like in the eye of Google quality systems right now?
I think, the more that you look like a trusted entity in Google search, which you can literally tell in the search results, the more weight that's going to carry in your SEO performance, generally speaking. So, like, there's tools that you can use to query Google's knowledge graph to see if you're a recognized entity, how confident they are about you as an entity, but you can literally just Google your brand name on Google. There's so much that you can learn about, like, do we have a knowledge panel? Have we claimed a knowledge panel? Do we have associated social media properties? Um,
Right.
do we own the top 10 or 20 organic results for our brand name? For Google Business Profile, do we have really clean listings for all of our locations, right? The more that you can just do that work to like really establish yourself as an entity and as a business in Google, generally speaking, the more confident they're going to be about your website and the content that comes from your website.
Okay. Now, when a site is struggling, how do you diagnose whether it's an EAT issue versus a content or a technical problem?
Well, EEAT and content are very strongly related.
Right.
But for technical SEO, you can usually tell pretty quickly. Like if you look in, let's say, the performance report in Google Search Console, and you see a lot of issues there. If you're using some type of crawler and it's alerting you to lots of different problems on the site, if you have a very JavaScript heavy website where there's rendering issues or there's performance issues, like that's usually pretty obvious. Sometimes you can see gaps in the content that you have on your website not being indexed in search, maybe because of different like rendering issues. And that's obviously a really big problem. I would say more often than not lately, it's a content problem. As far because Google's and Bing are just getting better and better at rendering websites and indexing websites and seeing different types of content. So I think it's really like when it comes to big traffic drops, generally speaking, I think it's content related or EEAT related. Now, as far as like whether it's EEAT or content, again, they're very strongly connected, but I think EEAT becomes more of an issue when you're writing about a topic that you don't truly have real authority or trustworthiness. So, much more so on like your money, your life topics. So, I think the most obvious examples over the last like 5 years have been companies that are writing about, let's say, weight loss supplements, or like weight loss, but the company
Okay.
sells weight loss supplements and the articles are almost always biased towards their own products. That's an EEAT problem where you're going to see probably Healthline and WebMD and Mayo Clinic ranking in top positions. That's because that's literally an EEAT change that Google did. With content, I would say it's much more, it could be any category, but scaling a lot of content for SEO purposes really quickly is almost always the culprit of why sites have been hit by algorithm updates.
So do you think EAT is more related to content in terms of blog, or is it related to commercial money pages as well?
It can be both, but it's usually like all of that tied together. So it's really like if you read the search quality guidelines, they ask the
Okay.
search quality raters to look on the website level, on the brand level, on the page level. Like they ask them to look at all those different levels, but I think it all ladders up into the brand's reputation. So if you have a lot of spammy or deceptive content on your blog, that can hurt the overall rankings of the whole site and the whole brand, right? But also, if you are a questionable brand where maybe you have a really poor Better Business Bureau rating, you have issues in Trustpilot, you have a lot of low ratings in Google Business Profile, I think that can
Right.
also affect the performance of your blog and all of your content. So I think it's all tied together. But at the end of the day, it's really just like the perception of the brand.
Okay. And now, what's one EAT component that you usually see which brand consistently ignore or maybe underestimate?
Um, I think having somewhat deceptive content is a really big one. You know, people think a lot about EEAT as like, oh, if I put an author on this blog post, then I did everything I need to do for EEAT. I've even seen companies write purely AI generated articles on your money, your life topics, and then put a human's name behind it and think that they did everything they need to do for EEAT. That's not how it works. In my opinion, if you're using a lot of AI to generate and automate your content, that should be labeled on the article. Most companies don't want to do that. But if you're not doing that, you are actually running the risk of being really deceptive with your customers. Because what happens when the AI gets something a little bit wrong and there's a human name attached to the article, and then you say, oh, sorry, we got it wrong. The AI did that. You know, and the reader said, I didn't know I was reading AI content. You know, Google literally says in its documentation that you're supposed to label AI content. Most companies are not doing that. So
Right.
that's one example of being a little bit deceptive. But I would say a more popular example is taking an article that's meant to be informational and trying to sell your product or your service in that
That's
article. So like it's really just kind of like funneling people into your commercial pages.
okay. And how important are external ecosystems, TikTok, YouTube, PR reviews for influencing EEAT and search visibility?
Yeah, I think you know, the connection between those platforms directly with Google's EEAT, I think it's hard to say. Like it would be very, very hard to I haven't done any type of like correlation analysis to see how popular a brand is on TikTok and how well they rank in Google search. But generally speaking, Google's obviously prioritizing these social channels quite a bit in its own search results, obviously YouTube being the biggest one. So I do
Right.
think there's a very strong connection between how well you're doing in YouTube and your organic search visibility, even if only in the sense of Google shows a lot of video content for a lot of organic results now, and they tend to prioritize YouTube. But I think it's kind of more of an indirect thing, right? So, like, if you're well known on TikTok, you probably have a lot of people searching for you on Google,
Yeah,
right? You probably
that
have a
is
lot of people looking for your brand.
right.
You have a lot of demand for maybe videos that you've created. And I think that brand demand really factors into EEAT. But I do think, I mean, now Google announced literally this week that they're going to start showing YouTube and TikTok and Instagram directly in Google Search Console. So I think this is a direction where it's going. Like they want to show, I also think they're doing this as a way to compensate for not showing AI search in Google Search Console. They're showing more impressions coming from social media sites. But I think it's also a clue from Google that they want businesses to be diversifying where they get their traffic and visibility from.
Okay. Uh, let's move to our next segment, AI search quality shifts and ranking volatility. Now, you've been tracking ranking volatility very closely. And why do you think the last few months have seen such a dramatic and, in fact, last year, perhaps more, such a dramatical shift and dramatical and unpredictable shift?
In rankings,
Yeah, in terms of ranking volatility, right?
so many reasons. I mean, I think number one, Google has many different systems that it uses to rank content that are all happening simultaneously. and it's introduced a lot more of them over the last few years. So now we have a reviews system, we have helpful content, like all these things. Many of them have been baked into Google's core ranking systems, but basically Google's looking at a lot more things when it ranks content. Obviously we have the impact of AI search. So AI overviews appear on what, like 20 or 30% of queries around the world on Google. So that's obviously going to change rankings in a dramatic way. We have Google changing things on the back end. So now the num equals 100 parameter was deprecated, which totally changes our reporting in SEO rank tracking tools and Search Console. And then I think one big like elephant in the room is Google Ads. So, I've had people, like even some friends, like write me recently and been like, I can't use Google. Like, I don't understand how to use Google anymore, because at the top we have 20 different ads, and then we have popular products, and then we have people also ask, and it's like, how do I even know where to go to get what I'm looking for anymore? So that obviously changes rankings as well. I think a lot of our clients are like, how do we even calculate what share of voice looks like if our website is buried in an AI overview within a people also ask? It's like the SERP has completely changed this year.
Yeah, in fact, the worst is how do you track the clicks, because that has tossed out of the window. You no longer can actually emphasize on clicks at all. Now, now Google keeps saying we have made improvement to quality system. Instead of this is a core update. What's your interpretation of the shift when they talk about all this?
I think, listen, like I mentioned before, there's a lot of examples that you could point to right now where Google claims that they've made improvements, but there's a lot of low quality content ranking really well. So it's a cycle. Every year it's a cycle where Google makes quality improvements for sure. In some cases, they crack down way too hard and they actually demote a lot of sites that, in my opinion, shouldn't have been demoted. I think they go too far sometimes. Like the helpful content update, I think they went way too far. But then there's maybe a new way that people are basically spamming Google or creating a lot of content that ranks really well, and Google hasn't like patched that up yet. So I think we're in that moment right now. And I think that next year we'll hear them say, we have a whole new set of systems that we're using to demote content. If you remember in March 2024, they said that they removed 40% of unhelpful content from Google search results. Like, that's a huge cleanup. I think we're due for that type of cleanup. So it just goes in cycles every year.
Right. Now, as in AI overviews and of course the generative search expands, how do you see user behavior changing?
Yeah, I think we're still in a phase where, AI search tools are mostly adopted by kind of early adopters. I think a lot of people are starting to change their behavior. Obviously you can talk to a lot of people now who say, I'm starting to use ChatGPT a lot more than I'm using Google. So I think what's going to be true across the board is, regardless of which LLM you choose, because it's almost like a team sport now where people have their favorite LLM of choice that they love using. The trend is that people prefer to use LLMs over Google search. I think that's where it's going, or at least over search engines for many different types of queries. It's still new, but I think that's obviously where things are going. And if you count AI overviews as an LLM, obviously Google's sharing. A lot of people love AI overviews. A lot of people complain that they don't, but I think Google keeps sharing. It's one of our most successful products. We've been amazed by how many people are adopting it. So it's pretty obvious when you think about it. If you don't have to look at 6 different websites, even though many people do enjoy doing that research, most people are lazy and just want the answer really quickly. So I think it's pretty clear that that's, especially for really obvious questions where there's just a really like one source of truth, like one answer that's, what are the colors in a rainbow? If AI overviews answers that question, most users are not going to click anywhere, obviously. But I think one thing that's also changing as people become more accustomed to using LLMs and AI search is that people are becoming more skeptical. They know when they need to maybe fact check something, or look on a search engine to make sure that it's true, or click into actual websites to read the truth, because the reality is AI answers can sometimes get things wrong. So I think more sophisticated users of LLMs know that they have to keep doing that, like fact checking.
Right. Now, what do you think SEOs are getting wrong about AI search, whether it's overestimating or underestimating its impact?
I think right now, a lot of not only SEO professionals, but like there's a lot of new people that have entered the space this year. I think it's probably one of the biggest moments of like an influx of new professionals entering the space who claim to be experts on AI search, which I think is a bit ironic because even the people that work at OpenAI and different LLM companies claim that they're not experts. Nobody can actually be an expert in how these things work. So what a lot of these folks I think are getting wrong is losing sight of the bigger picture and focusing too much on trying to trick LLMs in ways that are maybe not helpful for their own users. Because I think if we've seen anything over and over, and listen, I know a lot of people are betting on ChatGPT winning the long game. I'm personally betting on Google. I think we're going to go back to a place, like it or not, where a lot of this AI search stuff is happening on Google. And Google's been very, very clear that the same systems that they use to elevate high quality content, the same documentation, the same spam policies and everything are the same things they're using for AI search. Beyond that, ChatGPT uses Google's results. Other
Yes.
LLMs are using Google and Bing's results. So I wouldn't lose sight of doing the things that are important for SEO because you're so focused on AI search. I would do them both simultaneously.
And in fact, we all know Google has deeper pockets, so it's not OpenAI is completely burning money. Google is not.
Exactly.
So I also will put my money on Google.
For sure.
Yeah. Now, so are you seeing certain type of site consistently benefit from these new systems and other repeatedly lose?
Yeah, I think there's some pretty obvious winners. All the different studies that we've seen this year have almost always talked about how Wikipedia, Reddit, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Quora, they're really heavily cited in AI search. And I think if you think about what's common among those websites, I mean, Wikipedia is kind of its own thing, but technically it's user generated content. All the rest of them are user generated content. And what makes them unique, even though, yes, they're all susceptible to spam in their own way, and I know that's a big problem Reddit's been dealing with this year, is that the reason people like those websites is because of the user generated content and because of the real authentic conversations that are happening on those platforms. Of course, there's exceptions. I would say LinkedIn has a ton of spam. Quora has a ton of spam. It's not that these websites are immune to having a lot of AI generated content, a lot of spammy content, but generally speaking, what makes them valuable is that they have real human conversations. Even Facebook groups is really heavily cited in AI search. What do you get in Facebook groups? You get neighbors from the same neighborhood talking about, issues that are specific to their neighborhood. You're not going to get that type of content on like a big media company's website. So I think
Right.
that's the number one thing that AI search platforms are looking for. Beyond that, with OpenAI, they have a lot of these partnerships with big media companies. And there's a lot of new studies coming out that show a very strong correlation between the companies that they've partnered with and their properties getting a lot more citations in AI search, which is not too surprising. As far as who loses out, it's hard to generalize there, but I think, if you don't have good SEO performance, you're going to have a hard time being cited. There's definitely exceptions. I think ChatGPT does tend to cite companies and websites that don't have so strong of performance in Google sometimes. But generally speaking, yeah, I think if you have a lot of severe SEO issues, technical SEO issues, you're going to have a harder time being cited in AI search. And also, if you're not publishing new content, I think you're at a disadvantage as well.
Okay. Now let's talk about our next segment, which is training agency team for LLM optimization. Now, at MosCon 2025, you made a compelling case that GEO, AEO, and LLMO are largely rebranded SEO fundamentals, not revolutionary new disciplines. But agencies are under pressure from clients asking, what are you doing about ChatGPT? How should agencies think about AI search services? Is this a new service line, an extension of existing SEO, or something else entirely?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest question of the year. And to be clear, I believe that a lot of the same approaches that we use in the SEO space are necessary for visibility and citations and everything in AI search. So to that extent, they're very overlapping. But I absolutely acknowledge that there's new considerations for AI search that we didn't have to think about before with SEO. So at the very least, what tools are we using? What reporting are we doing? What metrics are we focused on? Because that's obviously changed. Like the way that you show up in a large language model is very different from how you might show up in a search engine. So to that extent, there's new reporting that's involved. There's new analysis that's involved. There's new competitors within that landscape that maybe, like, we've seen some companies where the competitive set in AI search is totally different than what it was in organic search. So the way we're approaching it at AMSIV is, it's not like we have new people that are managing AI search. It's still our SEO team, but our SEO team has spent years now really trying to understand AI search, demoing and working with lots of different tools, building out lots of new processes using AI. And what we're doing is we're offering it as an add-on, an extension to our SEO programs. It's not that expensive compared to SEO programs. I would say SEO programs are the foundation, but we're adding on an AEO consulting and audit service, because in reality, we have to pay for new tools. We have to pay for new analysis. We have to do net new analysis and reporting that we weren't doing with SEO before. So we just have to charge a little bit more for that at the end of the day, because there's new tools involved. And our team is doing new work, as I mentioned before. So, but that's the thing that I want to make clear is that's not very different than what has happened with our SEO team and SEO teams for years. So for example, let's say 12 or 13 years ago, we identified that international SEO campaigns require a whole lot of new work, a lot of new analysis, new tooling and everything. And there's certain people on the team that are much more equipped to handle that than others. So for clients that have very, very big, complex international SEO projects, that's an add-on on top of a regular SEO program. For clients that are really obsessed with Google News and Google Discover, those are different platforms than Google Organic Search. So we offer Discover audits, we offer Discover consulting. That's an add-on on top of SEO. It's not the first time in SEO history that we've had to add on a new offering. And listen, we're not trying to like rip people off. We're just being honest about, there's certain specialists on our team that know how to do this really well. They have to use completely different tools to get to this data, and they have different skill sets than traditional SEOs. So you're still getting the SEO fundamentals, but we're kind of adding on that extra layer of expertise, the same way that we have for many different types of SEO over the years.
So let's say if a client comes to you just for an LLM SEO or AI SEO, so what would you still say we will take you, but we still but will it be a separate service, or you will still say, since this is part of the SEO, so it's all bundled together?
Yeah, we actually, I would say, made the mistake early on in offering AEO, where you could just sign up for AEO and not SEO. And the reason for that is because when you start to look at the recommendations that come from, auditing the AI search performance of a site, it's almost all SEO. A lot of it is, listen, it's digital PR, it's social media, it's branding, but there's no world in which you can just look at LLM tracking data and say, you only can do tiny little things that have nothing to do with SEO. In many cases, it's like, you need to fix your website architecture, you need to fix your internal linking, you need to fix your branding, right? So it's like, we view it as basically a package where it's like, we're giving you an SEO program, but we're absolutely focused on AI search on top of that. It's kind of packaged together. And more often than not, that's going to also come with, like, when we do our AEO audits, it might be that they have a really big problem on Reddit, right? Or they have a really big problem on YouTube or something. So we have video teams, we have social media teams that work with Reddit. Like, a lot of times it actually expands into other channels at the agency.
Right. Okay. So now, how are you upskilling your team on LLM optimization? You said there are certain people who are good in it and certain people who are actually doing better or gets it better. So is it a cross training everyone, or or have you now created a specialist role? I mean, is there a curriculum you take these people through, or they are learning on their own?
Definitely. One of the things our team is extremely focused on is education. We implemented during coronavirus, when we were all working remotely, daily meetings with the whole team. And we've actually pretty much maintained those to this date. Sometimes they're 15 minutes, sometimes they're 20 minutes, but what we do is we literally meet every morning. On Mondays, I oversee the team meeting and I share all the latest SEO developments that have happened in the past week and my thoughts about them. And we discuss and learn as a team. On Tuesdays, we do tech SEO. On Wednesdays, we do client workflows. So we have like these kind of like specialized team meetings every day where everybody on the whole team is learning. And I would say that's been the single most impactful thing we've done to make sure like junior employees are learning every day. Obviously, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of meetings, but especially because we're now a remote agency. We have offices, but we do have people working all over the place. If you're not getting that visibility into how more senior people are doing things and learning things and new tools, sometimes we have new tools come on and do demos with us and things like that. Like if you're working in a vacuum from home, you're just going to lose out so quickly. So I think that educational aspect is really important to us. We also do lunch and learns, we also do trainings, but I think it's those daily check-ins that have had the most impact.
Yeah, I mean, I myself do Monday meetings, but I like the idea of having a tech day and update day. So definitely that's something to take home too. Now, so your research shows that LLM are gullible. You created fictional SEO rankings and they were cited within 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
So what are the implications for agencies? Does this create a new service opportunity around brand protection in AI, or is it more of a risk management?
I think, one thing that's exciting about AI search is how much you can do on your own website that maybe you weren't thinking about before. Obviously companies were thinking about things like EEAT. They were thinking about branding and conveying their brand in a positive light on their website. But I think what they weren't necessarily thinking about is how can you convey all the different information people should know about your brand in a very clear way on your website. So as an example, I was working on a website earlier this week where they have this like video, almost like an animated GIF that shows all the different companies that their product integrates with, or the different tools that their product integrates with. When you think about an LLM coming to your website, they can't see that GIF. They can't make sense of that GIF. So if you don't have like clearly stated language that explains who are the different tools that your product integrates with, the LLMs are going to have a very hard time picking that up. So I think a lot of this is like going through your website and saying, did we write this in a way that an LLM will clearly understand what our brand does? And did we include all the information on our website about what our brand does and all the product integrations and our leadership team and everything people should know about us? Because a lot of times people are more focused on like marketing, copy on their website. Now I think they need to focus on clarity. So luckily you can make a lot of these tweaks on your own site without having to do anything with like reaching out to lots of other sites. Obviously that helps too, but I think the very first step is to make sure that your own website is in control of the messaging around your brand.
So are you a fan of creating a separate content for LLM, or maybe having an LLM.txt file, or do you think it doesn't help at all?
There's a lot of debate around this right now, and it's a rare situation where the people that I trust and my mentors and people that I look up to very much have different opinions. Normally in the SEO space, you get like the people that you look up to the most are all pretty unanimous with their advice. Right now, I have some people that think it doesn't do anything. Some people that are very forward thinking and future thinking that think it absolutely is important. I think, listen, if you have the time and resources to build an LLMs.txt, do that, right? What we don't know is if it's going to be used, whether it's actively being used, like a lot of that's unknown right now. So I wouldn't prioritize that above other important projects. Google has said repeatedly they don't use it. That being said,
for a day, although they put it for a day and removed, right?
Yeah, they put one on their site last week, or they put one on the Google Search Console and then they deleted it the next day. But I think there is some early evidence that agents look at these pages, like ChatGPT will sometimes say, I'm looking at the LLMs.txt file. So like there's a lot of unknowns. I would just be careful about like cloaking, right? So if you're doing separate pages that are almost like spammy, they have a lot of information that's not available to the brand. Number one, you have to think about how you're managing that from a duplicate content perspective, because what happens when your users and search engines start visiting those pages and indexing those pages or whatever they do with that. But also like cloaking is a thing. So if you put a lot of information on that page that's not available to human searchers, I think Google can eventually, and search engines will eventually demote that.
But my personal take would be if because it's kind of an MD file, which of course LLM understands better. If your site is too much image heavy, I don't see any downsides. I mean, I am yet to see somebody got hit by putting an LLM.txt, so I won't think too much about it.
Yeah.
It's every so it's, you just put us basic information about your content or about your company. I don't see any harm to it as of now.
Yeah, I think it's just a question of if you have the time and resources, like you said, it's really simple.
Right.
See if-
That's the only answer, right? Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, so you mentioned like tools like Profound, PKI, and HRFS brand radar for tracking LLM visibility. So, what's the minimal viable stack agencies should invest in today, and what they should wait, or should they wait until the market matures?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna be totally honest, like there's so many tools in the space now and they're innovating so much that what was true, 6 months ago, as far as the competitive landscape, is totally different now. For example, SEMrush has built AIO, and that's a fantastic product as well. So there's so many new products, and like all of them are innovating in different ways that it's even hard to keep track of all of them. There's probably 20 LLM tracking tools that I've never even I haven't had the chance to demo because there's new ones all the time. But I think at the very least you should be using one. So demo a variety of them, see which one makes the most sense for your business, see which one fits within your budget, because they all have different price points. And I also think there is an advantage to companies like SEMrush and Ahrefs and Conductor and everything, because you get a lot of the organic insights in the same place as your AI insights, and the data kind of like joins together. So I do think the ones that do offer SEO capabilities might be at a slight advantage.
And I think it's because every day I hear honestly new tool coming up with new features. End of the day, I still see. I mean, I'm yet to come across a tool because end of the day, all the prompts are synthetic. I mean, let's be frank.
Right.
None of them are actual friend. They are all synthetic. I mean, I could, unless I'm going in a Google search console, picking something out there by using regex. I think they are all a glorified version of people also ask.
Yeah, 100%. I think one thing that's really easy to overlook with these tools is, like you said, it's synthetic prompts. And the prompts can also be really cherry picked, like selective, and then not
Yes.
necessarily representative of how people search.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we don't know how people search, right? We don't have insights into real prompts. We have very general information, but if you put a bunch of prompts into your tracking tool that your brand is going to be mentioned, that's very biased information. It's very easy to say, oh, look how well we're doing. But maybe you don't
Yes.
appear for all the other products that you offer at your company. So you have to be really careful about how you set up the prompts.
Right. And the funniest thing is all these prompts offering sentiments specifically negative. I am yet to see any LLM recommending negative when I'm asking them a positive question. If I ask who is the dentist nearest, it's not gonna say don't go to this dentist.
Yeah, definitely. There's a bias there. But I do think if you ask the right questions, it's possible, like, especially if you're asking about negative things, right? If you're
Yeah,
saying like, what are some of the pain points that customers have with this brand, So it could be depending on how they set up their prompts.
yeah, that is true. But for a same prompt, you cannot have negative as well as positive and a neutral. I mean, it just goes one way.
For sure.
I think, yeah, it's still a black box we all are exploring every day.
For sure. Exactly.
Right. Now for agencies who haven't started any AI search optimization work, what are the three things they should implement this quarter to be prepared without overhauling their entire operations?
I mean, there's debates around this, but I think you should at least be using one tool that's doing tracking for AI search.
Okay.
Like you need to see which of your pages are appearing at the very least in AI overviews, but obviously ChatGPT is also really important. Gemini is important. So like you want to have something set up where you can at least get a rough idea of visibility. Because for example, if you're never appearing in one of the LLMs, it could be something technical on your website, or maybe you're accidentally blocking them or something. So like you're not going to necessarily have that data unless you're not going to have those insights unless you have that tracking set up already. But also you want to be implementing tracking and reporting on your own properties as much as possible. So I think before the LLM tracking, you need to set up your own analytics to capture how many people are coming to your site and visiting your site from large language models. And then, although it's hard to get from many companies, I think log file analysis is becoming increasingly important because you can see how frequently the bots are hitting your site, which pages they're hitting,
Yes, absolutely.
So I think a lot of it is just setting up the reporting so that from there you can really kind of extrapolate, insights from that data.
Okay. Now, so let's talk about, this is our last segment, which is the future of the agency model. Now, you work with both in-house teams as well as served as an external counsel. When does it make sense for an enterprise to hire an agency versus build internally?
I think if possible, companies should always have at least one person internally who is tasked with execution or managing the, SEO and EEO program. So you can't outsource all of it. Like you really need somebody in-house that oversees things. But I do think where agencies can plug in is supporting the work that's being done in-house. A lot of times we have a lot of extra tools that they don't have access to. Like our team has like 30 or 40 different tools that we look at all the time where we bring in individual insights based on whatever project we're working on that really add value for the client. But as far as like whether to take it in-house or use an agency, I think what makes agencies helpful is the experience that we have across the board. When
Right.
you're using an in-house team, they tend to be much more focused on your own data and your own situation, but maybe they don't have a lot of experience in other areas of search. So I think best case scenario, it's a mix of both. You want to have at least one person or a few people in-house that are executing and
Okay.
they're overseeing things, but then they kind
Okay.
of tap into that agency expertise where the agency is going to be able to provide a lot more context about what's happening across the SEO landscape.
Right. So are you increasingly seeing consulting plus model where agencies advise in-house team rather than execute?
Yeah, I think at least for the level of clients that we work with, usually they have their own teams in-house and we
Okay.
plug in to help them do something. I just spoke to a client a few days ago
Hmm.
who said like you guys have she's an incredible SEO. She oversees her own SEO team at a very big enterprise company. And she said, you guys have been so helpful in supporting us because you've been doing a lot of the SEO research and the SEO projects and execution and everything that we haven't had time for. So like we're an add-on to their team. And that's generally how we like to partner. I think it's difficult for us to execute, right? Because like we can't always get access to the website. We can't always edit or write the content ourselves. A lot of times the brands want to be in control of that. So I think, yeah, having us as like an addition to existing teams is the best way to work together.
Okay. Now you built one of the strongest personal brand in SEO while leading an agency team. How important is it for an agency leader to build individual thought leadership? Does Lily Ray the brand helps or complicate massive the agency's positioning?
It helps. It very much helps. But I think, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. When you are really ultimately reflecting you're representing an agency, like I speak around the world on behalf of the agency, right? You have to be careful, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not just you, it's you and your team and your company. So,
Right.
for companies that kind of employ this type of model where maybe they have representatives or evangelists or influencers or whatever it is who speak on behalf of the company, obviously you want to be careful that their messaging is aligned with your company's messaging.
Right.
But what I love about AMSIV is they've really given me a lot of freedom to be myself because I think what they see is I live and breathe this stuff. I'm very excited about it. And I come up with a lot of original ideas that our team puts to use. So at the end of the day, it's mutually beneficial if I'm sharing my ideas because, I publish content on the AMSIV blog. I link to AMSIV when I get press mentions and things like that. So it's from what we've seen over 8 years of doing this together, it's very mutually beneficial.
Okay. Okay. And with this, we are out of time. I would love to have gone it, but again, we both have more engagements. And this has been an incredible, insightful conversation. Of course, your clarity and in-depth of analysis, which always brings sanity to an industry full of noises. So once again,
Thank you.
thank you for giving me your time.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And for our listeners, we'll link to Lily's research talk and updates in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, rate, and share it with your team or clients. Until next time, keep learning, keep testing, and keep building real authority in everything you do. Thank you. I'm just going to end the recording.